#aliens mocked human weapons until it was too late. The Nova Prime Alliance space station hung like a gleaming jewel against the velvet backdrop of space, its angular crystalline segments intermixed with the more utilitarian metallic human sections. This technological marvel represented the pinnacle of cooperation between humanity and the Cthar, a testament to interspecies diplomacy and shared scientific advancement. To most humans stationed there, Nova Prime was a daily reminder of how far behind their species lagged in the technological race. Dr. Eris Thorne stood in his domain, the Pre-Energy Technology Exhibition Hall, polishing the barrel of an ancient M4 carbine. His reflection distorted across its metal surface, the lined face of a man in his early 50s who felt increasingly obsolete in a world of energy weapons and phase shields. Eris was a military historian and mechanical engineer, one of the few humans who still believed there was value in understanding the principles that had guided warfare before humanity's partnership with the Cthar. Maintaining your curiosities again, Dr. Thorne? The melodic telepathic voice resonated directly in Eris's mind, causing him to straighten up and turn. Commander Forlag stood in the doorway, his 7-foot frame having to stoop slightly to enter the exhibition hall. Like all Cthar, Forlag possessed an otherworldly elegance, slender but powerful limbs, skin with a subtle metallic sheen that shifted between copper and silver depending on the light, and eyes with vertical pupils that glowed a soft amber. His cranial ridges, more pronounced than those of younger Cthar, indicated his advanced age and status. Not curiosities, Commander. History. Knowledge that shouldn't be forgotten, Eris replied, carefully placing the rifle back on its display stand. Knowledge of how to efficiently kill each other with metal projectiles and chemical explosions. Forlag's telepathic communication carried the distinct tone of amusement that the Cthar always used when discussing human military history. Hardly seems worth preserving. Eris forced a smile. This was a familiar dance between them. You might be surprised at the ingenuity behind these designs. The mechanical precision required, too. Mechanical precision, Forlag interrupted, the glow of his eyes intensifying slightly. That's precisely what makes them so quaint. Your species' fascination with moving parts that can jam, break, we're down. Our weapons have no such vulnerabilities. Everything has vulnerabilities, Commander. Different ones, perhaps, but they exist. Forlag moved further into the hall, his long fingers hovering over a display case containing an array of grenades from various periods of human history. The joint security exercise tomorrow. I understand you've again submitted proposals for backup protocols involving these artifacts. Eris nodded. I did. Crisis management should include redundancy options in case primary systems fail. Primary systems like our phase shields, our quantum-locked communication networks, our particle disruption arrays. Forlag made the equivalent of a Cthar chuckle, a fluttering pulse of telepathic amusement. Dr. Thorne, your persistence would be admirable if it weren't so misguided. The Cthar have not faced a significant military setback in over 3 centuries precisely because our technology is beyond failure. With respect, Commander, that's exactly the kind of thinking that precedes catastrophic failure in every historical example I've studied. Forlag's expression shifted to one of mild condescension. Then let us be grateful that your species now benefits from our protection and that such historical examples need not repeat themselves. He gestured broadly at the exhibition. Keep polishing your relics, Doctor. It's important to remember where we came from, even if only to appreciate how far we've advanced. The commander departed, leaving Eris alone with his thoughts and his relics. He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair and sighed. Tomorrow's joint security exercise would be another opportunity for the Cthar to showcase their technological superiority, and another chance for his concerns to be dismissed. Despite their alliance, the fundamental dynamic between humans and Cthar remained unchanged. They were the teachers, and humanity the eager but limited students. The security exercise began the following morning with an elaborate simulation of a station-wide emergency. Various scenarios were deployed: hostage situations, environmental failures, and external threats. In each case, Cthar technology provided elegant, efficient solutions. Their officers neutralized simulated attackers with precision energy pulses that temporarily disrupted neural pathways without causing permanent damage. Their engineers restored simulated environmental breaches with energy fields that could maintain atmosphere indefinitely. Their defensive specialists activated layered phase shields that could theoretically withstand impact from meteorites or even directed weapons fire. Throughout the exercise, Eris observed from the command center alongside other senior human staff and Cthar officers. The atmosphere was collegial but underlined by an unstated hierarchy. When the simulation concluded, Admiral Helena Chun, the ranking human officer, offered congratulations to the joint forces. Excellent work from all personnel. Our readiness metrics have improved significantly since the last quarter's exercise. Forlag inclined his head slightly. Indeed, though I note the human security teams still rely heavily on our guidance during critical scenarios. Perhaps more intensive training with our systems would be beneficial. Or perhaps, Eris interjected, we could devote some resources to maintaining alternative protocols that don't rely exclusively on energy-based technologies. The room fell silent. Cthar officers exchanged telepathic communications that humans couldn't perceive, but their slight head movements and eye flickers suggested amusement or dismissal. Admiral Chun looked uncomfortable. Dr. Thorne's suggestions have been noted in previous briefings. However, our current focus is on integration with Cthar defensive systems, which have proven more than adequate. More than adequate under controlled conditions, Eris pressed. But we haven't accounted for scenarios where those systems might be compromised. Electromagnetic disruption, quantum field instabilities. Theoretical concerns at best, interrupted Thalen, the Cthar chief science officer. Our systems operate on principles that transcend simple electromagnetic vulnerability. As for quantum field instabilities, his telepathic voice took on a patronizing tone. The mathematics involved in creating such a disruption would be beyond even our most advanced theoreticians. It is, quite simply, not a realistic concern. Forlag stepped forward, his tall frame dominating the center of the briefing room. Let's address this directly. Dr. Thorne wishes us to maintain stockpiles of kinetic weapons, firearms, explosives, primitive projectile devices, as a backup to our energy-based systems. He turned to face Eris. These weapons represent relics of a barbaric age when humans killed each other in the most brutal, inefficient ways imaginable. They are messy, dangerous to their users, limited in their applications, and fundamentally obsolete. The commander gestured toward a holographic display of Nova Prime's defensive systems. We have shared with humanity technologies that your greatest minds could not have dreamed of a century ago. Technologies that have kept the Cthar safe for millennia. Yet you would have us set them aside in favor of mechanisms that propel metal fragments with chemical explosions. Laughter, both audible from the humans and telepathic from Cthar, rippled through the room. Eris felt his face grow hot, but he maintained his composure. I'm not suggesting setting anything aside, Commander. I'm suggesting complementary systems based on different principles as a safeguard against the unknown. The unknown, Forlag repeated, amusement evident in his telepathic tone. Dr. Thorne, your species' preoccupation with preparing for unlikely catastrophes is precisely what held you back for so long. Progress requires focus on what works, not obsession with what might fail. Admiral Chun cleared her throat. I believe we've devoted enough time to this discussion. The exercise results have been logged, and recommendations will be distributed to all department heads. Dismissed. As the briefing room emptied, Eris remained seated, staring at the holographic display of Nova Prime's systems. All Cthar designed, all energy-based, all interconnected, all vulnerable to the same class of threats, whether the Cthar would admit it or not. Your persistence is remarkable. Eris looked up to find a young Cthar female standing nearby. Her skin had a more silvery sheen than most, and her cranial ridges were less pronounced, signs of youth among her kind. Lyra, he acknowledged, I didn't see you during the exercise. I was monitoring from the auxiliary science lab, she replied. Lyra was unusual among the Kthar, a junior scientist who had shown genuine interest in human technology and history. She occasionally visited Eris's exhibition, asking questions about mechanical principles that most Kthar dismissed as primitive. They're wrong to dismiss you entirely, she continued, taking a seat beside him. Though I don't necessarily agree with your conclusions. But you understand the principle of diverse redundancy? I do. It's simply that your particular choice of redundancy seems unnecessarily violent. Surely there are mechanical systems that don't involve weapons. Eris sighed. Defense ultimately requires the ability to neutralize threats. Kthar energy weapons are elegant and precise, until they don't work at all. Then what? Lyra's eyes flickered with interest. A scenario where all energy-based systems simultaneously fail? The statistical probability is vanishingly small. History is full of vanishingly small probabilities that occurred anyway, Eris replied. That's why we study it. Their conversation was interrupted by a station-wide announcement. All senior staff report to command. Anomaly detected in Sector 87. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The command center was a flurry of activity when Eris and Lyra arrived. Holographic displays showed a strange distortion in space approximately 50,000 kilometers from Nova Prime. Report, demanded Admiral Chun, addressing the sensor officer. Unusual spatial phenomenon detected 20 minutes ago, the officer replied. It began as a small distortion, but has expanded rapidly. Current diameter, approximately 500 kilometers and growing. Energy readings are inconsistent. It's interfering with our long-range scanners. Forlag studied the displays intently. I've never seen anything like this. Thalen, analysis? The Kthar science officer manipulated the holographic controls, his long fingers dancing through the projected data. It appears to be a region of space where electromagnetic signals are attenuated or blocked entirely. Further analysis is difficult because our sensor beams cannot penetrate it. A natural phenomenon? Admiral Chen asked. Unknown, Thalen replied. Its perfect spherical expansion suggests it may be artificial, but we have no record of technology that could create such an effect. Eris stepped closer to the display. What about our communications? Can we send signals through it? Negative, responded the communications officer. All standard channels are dead when directed through the anomaly. We're calling it the static shroud based on its effect on our systems. Recommend raising defensive shields as a precaution, Forlag stated, and deploying a scout vessel to investigate from a safe distance. Admiral Chin nodded her agreement. Make it happen. Within minutes, the Kthar scout ship Vigilant Edge departed Nova Prime, its sleek form visible on external cameras as it approached the edge of the expanding phenomenon. Vigilant Edge approaching anomaly perimeter, reported the communications officer. They're transmitting sensor data. Wait, we're losing their signal. The video feed from the scout ship flickered and died just as it entered the outer boundary of the static shroud. Attempt to re-establish contact, Forlag ordered. No response on any channel, Commander. They're gone. A tense silence fell over the command center, broken only by the soft beeping of monitoring systems. The shroud's expansion rate has increased, Thalen announced suddenly. New projected intercept with Nova Prime in approximately 3 hours. Forlag's eyes narrowed. Raise all shields to maximum power. Prepare defensive arrays. All non-essential personnel to emergency shelters. As the station's alert system blared, Eris caught Lyra's gaze. The young Kthar scientist looked troubled, her usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. You're thinking what I'm thinking, Eris said quietly. That our energy-based systems might be affected by this phenomenon? Yes, she admitted, but surely not all of them. Our technology operates on multiple principles. Let's hope you're right. The next hour passed in tense preparation. Kthar engineers reinforced the station's energy shields, while tactical officers prepared the formidable array of energy weapons that protected Nova Prime. Human personnel, following their Cthar counterparts' lead, conducted emergency protocols and prepared for potential systems failures. Shroud boundary will reach outer defensive perimeter in 5 minutes, announced the sensor officer. Forlag stood at the central command station, outwardly projecting calm confidence. All systems at maximum readiness. We have faced unusual phenomena before. Our technology will adapt. The massive view screen showed the approaching edge of the static shroud, a subtly distorted region of space that seemed to blur the stars behind it. As it reached the outermost sensor buoys surrounding Nova Prime, the feeds from those devices abruptly ceased. Outer sensor array non-responsive, reported a technician. Switching to secondary systems. Shroud boundary contacting outer shield layer, another officer called out. All eyes were fixed on the shield status displays. For a moment, everything seemed normal. The blue energy field, representing Nova Prime's primary defense, glowed steadily on the monitors. Then it flickered once, twice, and disappeared entirely. "Primary shields offline," shouted the defense officer. "Attempting to reroute, secondary shields failing. Tertiary shields failing." Forlag's confident demeanor cracked slightly. "Impossible. Reroute power from non-essential systems. Recalibrate shield frequency across the spectrum." "No effect, Commander. All shield technologies are non-responsive." Eris watched as the Cthar officers frantically worked their control stations, genuine alarm breaking through their usually composed expressions. The mighty technology that had seemed infallible was failing before their eyes. "Weapons systems report similar failures," called another officer. "Energy cannons offline. Particle disruptors offline. Quantum torpedoes unresponsive." The command center erupted in a chaos of reports as system after system shut down or malfunctioned. The Cthar, for the first time in Eris's experience, appeared genuinely frightened. Admiral Chen stepped forward. "Switch to emergency power and basic life support. At least those systems are based on older technology." Her words were cut short by a new alarm. On the view screen, objects were emerging from within the static shroud. Vessels of some kind, but unlike any Eris had ever seen. They had a crystalline appearance, their surfaces faceted like enormous diamonds, catching and reflecting the limited light in strange patterns. "Unknown vessels approaching Nova Prime," reported the sensor officer, now working with the most basic detection equipment. "Counting 12. No, 15 ships of varying sizes. Attempt communication on all frequencies," ordered Admiral Chun. After several tense moments, the communications officer shook her head. "No response. Our transmitters are barely functioning within the shroud anyway." "They're taking up position around the station," Forlag observed, his telepathic voice tense. "Classic siege formation." As if to confirm his assessment, the lead crystalline vessel fired upon Nova Prime. Instead of energy beams, however, it launched what appeared to be solid projectiles, massive crystalline spears that slammed into the station's hull with devastating force. Without the energy shields, they penetrated deep into the outer sections, causing explosive decompression in multiple areas. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, but the damage was severe. Alarms blared as casualty reports began flooding in. "They're using kinetic weapons," Eris said, the irony not lost on him. "Physical projectiles." Forlag stared at the screen in disbelief. "How can they navigate and operate within the shroud when our technology fails?" "Because they're not using energy-based systems," Eris replied. "At least not the same kind we do." He turned to Admiral Chun. "Admiral, we need to implement alternative defense protocols immediately." "What alternative protocols?" she demanded. "Our weapons are down." "Not all of them," Eris said, determination in his voice. "Follow me." Eris led a small group. Admiral Chun, Forlag, Lyra, and several security officers through the corridors of Nova Prime toward his exhibition hall. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as they moved, and occasionally the station shuddered under the impact of another crystalline projectile. "This is madness," Forlag protested as they hurried along. "Where are you taking us?" To the only weapons on this station that might still work, Eris replied without slowing. When they reached the pre-energy technology exhibition, Eris immediately moved to a control panel hidden behind one of the displays. He entered a complex code, and a section of wall slid open to reveal a secure storage area. "You maintain an arsenal?" Admiral Chen asked, shock evident in her voice. "Not an arsenal, a functional collection for research purposes," Eris corrected, pulling out weapon cases. "All properly documented in my department's research protocols. You just never bother to read them." He opened the cases to reveal an assortment of firearms, assault rifles, shotguns, handguns, along with ammunition and other equipment. "These are actual working weapons? Not just displays?" Forlag asked, his usual condescension replaced by cautious interest. "Every piece in the main exhibition is a working model," Eris confirmed, handing an assault rifle to one of the human security officers, who accepted it with practiced familiarity. "I've maintained them meticulously. They're fully operational." But Forlag started to object. "Commander," Eris interrupted firmly, "your energy weapons are useless right now. Your shields are down. These crystalline entities, whatever they are attacking us with physical projectiles. We need to respond in kind, or Nova Prime falls. It's that simple." Admiral Chen studied Eris's face for a moment, then nodded. "Dr. Thorne is right. We have no choice." She turned to the security team. "Distribute these weapons to all personnel with firearms training. Set up defensive positions at key junctions." As the human officers began selecting weapons, Forlag approached Eris privately. "These weapons, can they actually harm the attackers? We don't even know what they're made of." "We'll find out," Eris replied grimly, checking the action on a compact submachine gun. "But physics is physics. A high-velocity projectile carries kinetic energy whether the target is flesh, metal, or crystal." Lyra stepped forward, examining one of the firearms with scientific curiosity. "The creature's attacking us. I'm picking up unusual readings from the fragments of their projectiles. They seem to be silicon-based life forms, or at least their technology is. Silicon-based." Eris considered this. That would explain their crystalline appearance and possibly their immunity to energy weapons. Silicon can be structured to disperse energy, and might be vulnerable to physical shock, Lyra added, understanding dawning in her eyes. High-impact trauma could disrupt their crystalline matrices. "Exactly," Eris nodded. "Admiral, we need to get these weapons distributed immediately and coordinate a defense. And we'll need more ammunition." He turned to Forlag. "Commander, I'll need access to the station's manufacturing facilities. With the right materials, we can produce ammunition and improvise additional weapons." To Eris's surprise, Forlag didn't object. The Cthar commander merely nodded, his pride temporarily set aside in the face of existential threat. "You shall have whatever resources remain functional." A station-wide announcement interrupted them. "Breach in sectors 12, 17, and 23. Unknown entities boarding the station. All available security personnel respond." "They're inside," Admiral Chen said grimly. "Let's move." Within the hour, a desperate resistance had been organized throughout Nova Prime. Human security officers, armed with Eris's preserved weapons, took leading roles for the first time in the station's history. Cthar personnel, initially reluctant and awkward with the unfamiliar firearms, quickly adapted under pressure. Eris established a makeshift manufacturing center in one of the engineering bays, where a team of human engineers and Cthar metallurgists worked frantically to produce ammunition using the station's raw materials. Lyra led a separate team analyzing fragments of the attackers, now identified as the Silicate Scourge based on their composition, to identify weaknesses. The first direct encounter with the Scourge occurred in Sector 17, where a security team led by Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, confronted 3 crystalline entities attempting to access a critical power junction. The creatures stood nearly 8 feet tall, with faceted bodies that seemed to shift and reconfigure as they moved. When energy batons, the standard non-lethal option for station security, passed harmlessly through their forms, Rodriguez ordered her team to open fire with their newly acquired firearms. The effect was immediate and dramatic. High-caliber rounds shattered the crystalline structures, sending fragments skittering across the deck plating. The entities emitted high-pitched tones that human ears could barely perceive, but which the Cthar later described as screams of pain or alarm. Similar reports came in from throughout the station. Conventional firearms, while not always immediately lethal to the Scourge, caused significant damage and disruption to their crystalline forms. Shotguns proved particularly effective at close range, the spread of pellets creating multiple fracture points in the entity structures. In the command center, now relocated to a more defensible position deeper within the station, Eris, Admiral Chun, and Forlag coordinated the defense efforts. A holographic display, one of the few systems still partially operational, showed the current situation. Approximately 40% of Nova Prime had been compromised, with Scourge entities establishing control points throughout the captured sections. They're moving methodically toward the central core, Forlag observed. Their strategy suggests intelligence, not merely instinctive aggression. They're after our primary power source, Admiral Chen concluded. If they disable that, even our basic life support systems will fail. We need to consolidate our forces, Eris suggested. Set up a defensive perimeter around the core and strike back with everything we have. Agreed, said Forlag. But our ammunition supplies are limited, and the Scourge entities appear to be growing more cautious after their initial losses. They're adapting. Lyra entered the command center, her silver-sheened face showing signs of exhaustion but also excitement. I've completed my analysis of the Scourge fragments. There's something you need to see. She activated a portable scanner, projecting images of the crystalline structure of the Scourge entities. Their physical forms are composed of a silicon-based crystalline matrix, but it's not uniform. Look here, she pointed to specific nodes within the structure. These appear to be control centers of sorts. When damaged, the entire structure becomes destabilized. Weak points. Eris translated. Target these, and we can take them down more efficiently. Precisely, Lyra confirmed. But there's more. The Scourge don't just resist energy weapons. They absorb the energy. That's likely how they're powering themselves within the static shroud. Our systems aren't failing simply because the shroud blocks energy. The Scourge are actively draining it. Admiral Chen leaned forward. Can we use that against them? Overload them somehow. Possibly, Lyra considered. But we need a massive energy surge delivered in a way they couldn't simply absorb. Combined with physical impact to their control nodes, Eris finished her thought. A modified explosive device. Something that delivers both kinetic force and energy overload precisely to these weak points. Forlag, who had been listening intently, spoke up. The quantum capacitors in our primary weapon systems. They're currently inert due to the shroud's effect, but if reconfigured to discharge all at once, we could create improvised bombs, Eris nodded. Powerful ones. I can modify them, Lyra offered, with the right delivery mechanism. Leave that to me, Eris said. I think I know just the thing. As they finalized their plans, a new alert sounded. Multiple breaches detected near the core perimeter. All available forces respond immediately. This is it, Admiral Chun said grimly. They're making their main push. The battle for Nova Prime's core became a desperate last stand. Human and Cthar defenders established barricades at key choke points, armed with a combination of firearms, improvised explosives, and even melee weapons for close combat. The clash of industrial-age ballistics against crystalline entities created a cacophony unlike anything ever heard on the station. The sharp crack of gunfire, the crystalline shattering of wounded Scourge, the screams of the injured. Forlag, setting aside millennia of Cthar military tradition, took up a modified shotgun and joined the frontline defenders. His superior Cthar reflexes made him a formidable gunman despite his lack of experience with the weapon. Beside him fought humans who had once deferred to Cthar authority in all security matters, now giving tactical advice to their alien allies. Aim for the central mass. Lieutenant Rodriguez shouted to a group of Cthar defenders as a new wave of Scourge entities approached. Short bursts. Conserve ammunition. The Cthar complied without hesitation, their earlier disdain for human weaponry forgotten in the heat of battle. Meanwhile, in a makeshift workshop near the core, Eris and Lyra worked frantically to complete their secret weapon, a modified rail gun using scavenged parts from the station's manufacturing facilities, powered by reconfigured Cthar quantum capacitors. The device was crewed by Cthar standards, a hybrid of human mechanical engineering and repurposed alien power systems. Will it work? Lyra asked as they made final adjustments. The principles are sound, Eris replied, tightening a crucial connector. It should deliver both the kinetic impact and energy discharge directly to their central control nodes. But we'll only get one shot before it burns out. Then we need to make it count, she said, determination in her voice. A violent explosion rocked the station, nearly knocking them off their feet. They've breached the inner perimeter, Eris realized. We're out of time. They rushed their creation to the final defensive position, a barricaded entrance to the core itself, where Admiral Chun, Forlag, and the remaining defenders were making their last stand against an overwhelming force of scourge entities. The scene was one of chaotic violence. Human security officers fired in disciplined volleys from behind makeshift barriers. Cthar personnel, their elegant energy weapons useless, wielded improvised clubs and axes alongside human firearms, engaging in physical combat that their species had considered obsolete for centuries. The deck was littered with crystalline fragments from destroyed scourge and the bodies of fallen defenders. Dr. Thorne, Admiral Chun called out when she spotted him. Please tell me that contraption is operational. It is, Eris confirmed, but we need a clear shot at their command node. Forlag, his normally immaculate appearance, now marred by injuries and crystalline dust, approached them. Their command node? You mean the largest entity? Eris nodded, pointing to a massive crystalline form visible behind the front lines of the scourge, a towering entity nearly twice the size of the others, with a more complex structure. That one, according to Lyra's analysis, it's coordinating the others. Take it out, and we might disrupt their entire attack. How close do you need to get? Forlag asked. Too close, Eris admitted. We'll need to break through their front line. Forlag's eyes gleamed with a new respect. Then we shall break through. He turned to the remaining defenders. Concentrated assault. Open a path to the command entity. All forces prepare to advance. With a final rallying cry, the combined human and Cthar forces surged forward in a desperate charge. Firearms blazed, improvised explosives detonated, and hand-to-hand combat erupted along the line as defenders and scourge entities clashed in a furious melee. Eris and Lyra followed close behind, pushing the heavy rail gun on its makeshift carriage. As the defenders fought valiantly to create an opening, Eris watched in horror as many fell. Lieutenant Rodriguez took a crystalline shard through the chest, but continued firing until she collapsed. A young Cthar scientist who had once mocked human technology died, protecting a human engineer from a scourge attack. Finally, a narrow path opened, leading directly to the command entity. Forlag himself stood at the breach, bleeding from multiple wounds, but still fighting, his shotgun roaring defiance at the advancing crystalline forms. Now, Dr. Thorne, he shouted. Take the shot. Eris and Lyra rushed forward, positioning the rail gun at the edge of the breach. Lyra quickly calibrated the targeting system, while Eris charged the capacitors. Ready, Lyra announced. Fire in the hole. Eris shouted, activating the firing mechanism. The makeshift railgun surged with power, the reconfigured quantum capacitors glowing with blinding intensity as they discharged their energy into the projectile, a specially designed penetrator round packed with reactive compounds. The weapon fired with a thunderous boom that reverberated throughout the core, the recoil nearly toppling its carriage. The projectile streaked toward the command entity, trailing energy as it flew. It struck the crystalline form directly in its central mass, penetrating deep before detonating in a spectacular explosion of kinetic force and released energy. The command entity shattered, fragments flying in all directions as the energy release created a chain reaction within its structure. The explosion propagated outward, affecting the nearby Scourge entities, which began to destabilize and fracture as well. Throughout the station, reports flooded in of similar effects. Scourge entities suddenly losing cohesion, their coordinated attack faltering and then collapsing entirely. Within minutes, the remaining invaders began to retreat, abandoning their captured sections of Nova Prime and fleeing back to their vessels. As suddenly as it had appeared, the static shroud began to dissipate, shrinking rapidly until it vanished entirely from Nova Prime's sensors. The Scourge vessels, those that remained intact, accelerated away from the station and disappeared into the depths of space. In the aftermath, Nova Prime was a shadow of its former glory. Nearly a third of the station lay in ruins, with sections exposed to space or sealed off due to catastrophic damage. The casualties were severe, hundreds dead, many more injured. Among the Cthar, the losses were particularly shocking, as they had not experienced such casualties in warfare for centuries. A solemn memorial service was held in what remained of the station's grand assembly hall. Human and Cthar alike gathered to honor those who had fallen in the defense of Nova Prime. Admiral Chun spoke first, her words echoing in the damaged chamber. Today we remember those who gave their lives so that others might live. They fought with courage and determination against an enemy unlike any we have faced before. Human and Cthar, they stood together, and together they prevailed. Forlag stepped forward next. The Cthar commander's injuries had been treated, but he moved with a new stiffness, his normally fluid grace diminished by the physical trauma of combat. For 3 centuries, the Cthar have relied on technology that we believe to be infallible. He began, his telepathic voice resonating with a humility that few had ever heard from him before. We dismissed other approaches as primitive, inefficient, obsolete. In our pride, we failed to recognize a fundamental truth that our human allies tried to teach us. Diversity of method creates resilience. Redundancy is not inefficiency, it is wisdom. His gaze found Eris in the crowd. Dr. Eris Thorne attempted to warn us. We did not listen. The cost of our arrogance was paid in blood, both human and Cthar. It is a debt we can never fully repay, but we can honor it by learning from our mistake. After the ceremony, as the attendees dispersed to continue the work of rebuilding, Eris found himself back in his exhibition hall. The space had been damaged during the battle, but most of the displays remained intact. Many of the weapons, of course, were gone, deployed throughout the station and still being used to maintain security until the Cthar systems could be fully restored. "I never properly thank you," said Forlag, appearing in the doorway much as he had days earlier. This time, however, there was no condescension in his bearing, only a weary respect. "No thanks necessary, Commander," Eris replied. "I just did what needed to be done, as did we all." Forlag moved further into the hall, studying the remaining displays with new interest. "But you were prepared when no one else was. You maintained these weapons despite ridicule and opposition. Without your foresight, Nova Prime would have fallen." Lyra joined them, carrying a datapad. "The preliminary reconstruction plans have been approved," she reported, "and I've been appointed to head a new research initiative, Diversified Defense Technologies." "An excellent choice," Eris said with genuine approval. "The initiative will need experienced advisors," she continued, looking at him expectantly, "particularly those with knowledge of non-energy-based systems." Eris smiled. "I'd be honored." Forlag picked up a preserved revolver from one of the displays, examining it with careful attention to its mechanical components. "We have much to learn from these historical artifacts. The principles behind them may be old, but their relevance has been proven beyond doubt. The oldest lesson in warfare," Eris said quietly, "never become so enamored with your advanced technology that you forget the fundamentals." He took the revolver gently from Forlag's hands and returned it to its display. "Every technology has vulnerabilities. True security comes from diversity of approach." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "The silicate scourge, They were the opposite of us in many ways. Silicon-based rather than carbon, crystalline rather than organic. And yet they fell into the same trap of technological homogeneity that we did. A fitting observation, Forlag agreed. They relied entirely on their immunity to energy weapons and their ability to drain power. When faced with technology that operated on different principles, they shattered, Eris finished, just as our defenses did when faced with their static shroud. The three of them stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the symmetry of the situation. Around them, Nova Prime hummed with the sounds of reconstruction, the mechanical clank of repair drones, the hiss of emergency seals being tested, the voices of human and Cthar working together with a new sense of equality and mutual respect. We will rebuild, Forlag said finally. Not just the station, but our approach to technology and defense. The Cthar High Council has already approved a fundamental review of our military doctrine. And Alliance Command has authorized permanent storage of conventional weapons aboard all joint facilities, Eris added. No more exhibitions, actual armories. Lyra's eyes brightened with scientific curiosity. I've been thinking about hybrid systems, technologies that combine Cthar energy principles with human mechanical engineering. Weapons that could function in either environment, defenses with multiple redundancies. An excellent direction for research, Forlag approved. Perhaps we should establish a joint laboratory. An alarm chimed softly on Lyra's datapad, interrupting the conversation. The first reconstruction team is assembling in Sector 7, she reported. They're preparing to seal the breach in the outer hull. We should join them, Eris suggested. I have some ideas about reinforcing the structural integrity that might be useful. As they walked together through the damaged corridors of Nova Prime, Eris reflected on the terrible cost of the lesson they had learned. So many lives lost because of pride and technological complacency. The Cthar had mocked human weapons as primitive and barbaric, overlooking their simple reliability. That mockery had left them vulnerable when faced with an enemy that exploited their technological dependency. Yet even in tragedy, there was hope for a better future. The survivors, human and Cthar alike, moved through the station with a new understanding in their eyes. The artificial hierarchy that had defined their relationship for so long had crumbled under the pressure of shared survival. In its place, something more valuable was emerging. Genuine partnership based on mutual respect for different strengths and perspectives. At a junction, they passed a mixed team of human and Cthar engineers working together to repair a damaged power conduit. A young Cthar was learning to use a manual wrench under the patient guidance of a human technician, while nearby, a human engineer studied a Cthar energy flow diagram with newfound appreciation. Too late, Forlag murmured, almost to himself. Pardon? Eris asked. We learned the value of your mechanical principles too late to prevent this catastrophe, the Cthar commander clarified. If we had listened sooner, incorporated your redundancy protocols when first suggested, perhaps we could have averted some of this destruction. Eris shook his head. We can't know that for certain. What matters is that we learn from it. Now that the lesson isn't wasted. It won't be, Lyra promised. Already, Cthar scientists across the Alliance are re-examining human technologies they once dismissed. And I understand human engineers are showing new interest in adapting and improving Cthar principles rather than merely implementing them as received wisdom. They reached the breach site, where a massive hole had been torn in Nova Prime's outer hull by Scourge weaponry. Through the temporary energy field containing the atmosphere, they could see the stars beyond, the same stars that had witnessed the battle, indifferent to its outcome. We begin again, Forlag said, surveying the damage with clear eyes, wiser than before. As the reconstruction team prepared their equipment, a mix of advanced Cthar technology and reliable human tools, Eris felt a cautious optimism rising within him. The cost had been unconscionably high, but perhaps something valuable had emerged from the crucible of crisis. A true partnership of equals, each respecting the other's strengths and compensating for their weaknesses. In the exhibition hall, soon to be renamed the Alliance Joint Armory, the ancient weapons would stand alongside the most advanced Cthar designs. No longer curiosities or relics, but honored tools that had saved Nova Prime when nothing else could. The plaque at the entrance would tell their story for generations to come, of pride and dismissal, of unexpected vulnerability, and of the resilience found in diversity. The Cathar had mock-human weapons until it was too late. But from that lateness, a new beginning had emerged, one that promised a stronger, more adaptable future for both species. Together, they turned to the work of rebuilding.